This week, Nate gets some friends together for a quick game of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds as they try to figure out what makes this game so popular. We continue the Last Man Standing theme by taking a look at Fortnite's new Battle Royale mode, and look back at some of the gaming highlights that came out of brand new technology festival, Hybrid World Adelaide. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this week saw Bethesda take a fairly uncompromising stance when it came to promoting Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Here's a quick refresher for you. Wolfenstein: The New Order is set in an alternate history timeline, a version of the 1960s where the Nazis won the Second World War. This month's upcoming sequel, The New Colossus, takes the franchise to America, where BJ Blazkowicz and pals are trying to set up a second American revolution against the totalitarian regime. In that context, Bethesda's latest promotion, which centres around the No More Nazis hashtag, makes a lot of sense. What doesn't make sense is the backlash the publisher is experiencing, with online comments accusing the game of cashing in on the recent political climate or of unfairly targeting Nazis and white supremacists. Some are even suggesting that Machine Games is advocating killing people who support US President Donald Trump. Bethesda's Pete Hines has explained in simple terms that the company does not develop games to make specific statements or incite political discussions, instead preferring to make games that are, fun. In Wolfenstein's case, he says, it's pure coincidence that Nazis are marching in the streets of America this year, and it's disturbing that the game can be considered a controversial political statement at all. Obviously, and unsurprisingly, neither Bethesda nor developer Machine Games are planning on changing anything about Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, which is due out on October 27. On to something completely different but equally controversial following the release of the second episode of Batman: The Telltale series.
Riddler was just a small part of a larger threat.
Now, game artists draw inspiration from the world around them, and at times this can include using real-world imagery as placeholders or temporary artwork. Of course, this practice requires a significant amount of caution, making sure that all materials used are carefully checked before the game hits the publishers. This week, it looks like that process may have failed somewhere along the line as Telltale Games worked on their latest comic installment. An image from the game shows an aftermath of a bank robbery, with bodies littering the ground outside an empty vault. And one of those bodies appears to bear a striking resemblance, or be heavily modelled after, the iconic photograph of Russian Ambassador Andrei Karlov, taken shortly after his assassination in a Turkish art gallery last December. Telltale has not shed any light on just how the distinctive figure came to be included in the game, but the company was quick to express regret over the incident and release an update for Batman: The Telltale series, which removes the image across all platforms. And finishing out this week's trilogy of controversy, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has received a serious wave of negative reviews, the first in the game's short history, just days after cracking the 1.5 million concurrent user mark. The source of the backlash came from nearly 10,000 Chinese gamers who weren't too keen on the sudden inclusion of in-game advertising. As if it wasn't bad enough that ads were now included in a game that people had paid money to play, the nature of the ads themselves proved problematic, promoting a third-party gaming VPN in China promising to improve players' ping times. Disgruntled fans argued that, rather than promoting workarounds for the lag problem, developer Bluehole should instead be fixing the problem and improving local Asian servers. In quick, less controversial news, Assassin's Creed Origins will include a difficulty setting for the first time in the Ubisoft series history. This time around, the developers acknowledge that people play for different reasons. Some love the challenging gameplay, but others want the story, and still others play for the history element. When the game launches at the end of the month, you will be able to shift your difficulty selection up or down as you see fit, adjusting things dynamically so you can keep things challenging or make certain encounters a little easier to get through. And speaking of making things easier to get through, if you were considering cheating to get ahead in the new Battle Royale mode for Fortnite, Epic Games encourages you to think again. The dev team is getting ready to bring the ban hammer down hard upon people caught misbehaving in server. Details are being kept under wraps for now, but tools are being rolled out, and we're told that every measure is being explored to ensure that cheaters are removed and stay removed from the Epic ecosystem. In happier news, Netflix is getting ready for the launch of Stranger Things Season 2 by publishing a tie-in video game. The retro-inspired mobile release is simply titled Stranger Things The Game and features characters from the cult series tucked into some familiar locations. Stranger Things The Game is out now for both iOS and Android, and it is completely free to play with no extra purchases or microtransactions included. Meanwhile, if you are still a fan of the original Star Wars Battlefront 2 from 2005, you would probably be interested to learn that a new mod adds 5 new gameplay modes as well as a massive 25 new maps. It is worth noting that if you are a long-time fan of the series, you might actually remember Star Wars Battlefront Conversion Pack from its original release back in 2008. This is the same stuff, but it has been revamped to work with the game's latest version. Installing is a multi-stage process where you need to get the mod and then an update and then a new patch, but if you are still playing and want to check out a new era and a serious chunk of new content, it should be worth the download. But if you're in the mood for something completely different, it is a lovely weekday morning in the village and you are a horrible goose. That is our first look at Untitled Goose Game, which is due out next year from House, the Australian developers of Push Me, Pull You. We don't really have anything more to say about it, but we just wanted to make sure that everybody knows about it. For more information on any of these stories or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, we've got plenty more still to come.
Today we are doing a 2-hour Steam where we buy a game from Steam, play it for 2 hours, and then decide if we're going to refund it or not. Today I have 3 people joining me.
Hey, I'm Xavier Prexa. I enjoy first-person shooters, community-based games, and most of the time I play on PC. However, I also enjoy playing on Xbox and PlayStation on occasion.
Hi, I'm Harmony. I'm a fan of open-world adventure games, but I'm really getting into multiplayer games, so I'm pretty excited about today's game.
I'm Dean. I like RPG games. I also play on PC and Xbox One.
Cool, and today we're looking at PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, a Battle Royale style game where 100 players are dropped into a map.
You'll be thrown into the match where you have to scavenge, evade or attack other players, and also fight against the map as it continually shrinks and forces you into a tighter and tighter space against your fellow players.
From there, it's more finding my team, camping out upstairs, camping the stairs, do a little house. The game was very good with direction of sound, so you could hear footsteps, gunshots. More just I sat and I listened.
Yeah, well, the atmosphere definitely added to the intensity of the game. Otherwise, especially in those moments that were a bit slow, you're camping out. But yeah, then you'd hear distant gunshots, explosions in the distance, might have a bit of fog on the map or something. It makes it so much more terrifying.
Man,
There's another bombing.
You want to vacate yet?
Woo!
I don't want to vacate yet.
I want to vacate. If we head west,
Shots, lots of shots.
They're in the opposite building.
But the weather wasn't dynamic, it was static, so fog wouldn't roll in halfway through a match, but it would appear at the start, making it more difficult for those snipers that always seem to get us. Where's the...
You're about to be massacred.
Yeah, they got
I'm down.
us. They got us.
There's solo, duo, and squad-based game modes.
And it also introduces a whole new mechanic, being able to revive teammates meaning that when you're down, you're not necessarily out if a teammate can get to you. With playing with friends, I found that if you wanted to verse each other, it was quite a challenge because you couldn't actually invite people through Steam or join through Steam. You had to rely on third-party custom servers, which sort of neglected to let you know if you were waiting on a countdown timer or more players to join, and you just sort of were loaded in and then left to wait.
Adding in something that will allow players to join a match together, but still fight free for all, needs to be looked at because it's entirely unreliable right now.
So I had a controller plugged in, and PUBG picked up on that, but it was keyboard and mouse in the menus.
Yeah, I definitely found that trying to start with the controller was confusing because it only had the keyboard controls at the start, like on the menu.
I wasn't able to see the layout, change buttons or anything like that. But it was pretty easy to pick up for anyone who's used a controller, you know. There was a couple of odd discrepancies. Y was reload and X was interact with objects. That caught me off a few times.
One thing I found quite annoying and was the cause of a couple of deaths was when you pick up an automatic weapon, every weapon's forced to be single fire and you have to manually change it to full auto because sometimes you were picking them up in a fray and you needed the full auto straight away and you would just forget.
Well, I definitely think that the customization is quite simple, but it definitely caters to a large audience.
You're not expecting much, but I'll tell you this, it was like pretty good considering if you look at like a AAA title like Destiny or Destiny 2 and their character creation.
And it did allow for a bit of flavour with different like coats and jackets you could get, but to get them you had to unlock battle packs, which were costly items to buy to get a singular clothing item of random. I got pants. I got 2 pairs of pants.
Well, as the game is a early access, it does have its issues, but I see that the game is definitely doing its best to compensate for that. My game froze and crashed twice. The second time was while I tried to reload into the match, but as you could actually reload right back into that match where you took off with all your gear exactly where you were. Like, I think that is a great way of dealing with the issue.
So overall, I found the game quite fun with friends, but by myself, I'll probably get a bit bored. It's very repetitive gameplay, and so I think I will refund it based on that. But with friends, I definitely would keep it.
I think this is the kind of game that players of DayZ are going to be very at home in. It's got community involvement, it has a lot of skills that you have to develop, and it's a lot of fun just in general. It's got a lot of adrenaline that runs through it. So I'm a firm keeper. I'd play it with friends, I'd play it on my own.
It was a fun game, especially with a group to play it with, but I don't think I'd keep it. But it's something I'm keeping an eye on. Updates come of it, whether it's worth getting back to a later date.
It was a really fun game, but like it's sort of been said, it needs more to keep you entertained in the long run. It's definitely a lot more fun with friends, but otherwise I'm eventually going to get bored, so I'm going to refund it.
That was 1 keep for solo and 3 keeps for with friends, and that's $30 on Steam if you want to check out PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
We may no longer use the label the festival state, but South Australia has more than its fair share of celebrations. The latest addition to the calendar was held in early October, with Hybrid World Adelaide bringing all the excitement of new technology to the former Mitsubishi site in Tonsley. The program combined an impressive futurist conference and a number of masterclasses discussing everything from programming to robotics to parenting tips in a digital world, but for many people the highlight was the LAN tent. Across the 4 days of the event, Hybrid World Adelaide played home to a League of Legends tournament with a difference, a world-first high school LAN competition. Students from across South Australia went head-to-head in a series of 5v5 sudden death matches. Given the nature of a LAN competition, there were 6 matches being held simultaneously, with only a handful making it onto the main stage and the live stream. First up, we saw Findon High School versus Christian Brothers College in a match that saw the private schools stomp on the public students.
It locks it down. Game 1 to CBC.
That trend didn't last though. Cabra Dominican College was up next, facing up against the B team from Glenunga International High School, who successfully held off their opponents. Match 3 on stage saw 2 public schools, Adelaide and Woodville, duking it out in perhaps the best game of the day.
Is it level 1 ace? This is level 1 ace. Level 1. Oh no. Oh no. Woodville High School. Not like this.
And then, suggesting that the foothills might be a breeding ground for great league players, the qualifying finals saw both of the Glenunga teams on stage in a thrilling match. Unfortunately for Glenunga B, their time was up, left to face off against Woodville to determine 3rd place. And of course, that left Glenunga International High School A to take on Adelaide High School in the first ever High School LAN Grand Finals.
And ladies and gentlemen, you have got your winners. This is going to be Adelaide High School taking the Hybrid World Tournament.
The dawn of Day 2 at Hybrid World Adelaide brought more League of Legends action, with the 3 university teams up first. A round-robin tournament saw representatives from the University of Adelaide, University of South Australia and Flinders University trying to find out who was the best. Spoiler, with a 2-1 record, Flinders were triumphant.
And that's Flinders taking their 2nd win here, this time over Uni SA.
And then it was back for more high school LAN. The second day of competition saw Prince Alfred College up against the Australian Science and Mathematics School. Round 2 on the main stage had PAC switch sides and face off against a second Adelaide High School team, fresh from their success on Day 1. Round 3 was Adelaide's turn to cross the stage, battling it out against Northern Suburbs representatives from Parafield Gardens High School. But finally, for the second grand final of the competition, Prince Alfred College versus Australian Science and Mathematics School in what was, honestly, a bit of a whitewash.
And that is the end of that.
ASMS
takes the win.
ASMS.
17,000 gold lead.
And then on Sunday, for something completely different, streaming superstars Wild and Mr. Crayfish invaded the LAN tent for a series of Minecraft masterclasses where South Aussie kids were given the opportunity to literally build the future. Following the recent completion of the new Royal Adelaide Hospital, the future of the former site has been in limbo, but these kids had some ideas on just what it could be used for. Working together with Government Department Renewal SA, Wild had used Minecraft to painstakingly recreate the iconic Adelaide location, which he then turned over to the audience to build on. Creations were as varied as the children themselves, with some creating crazy parkour arenas, others making giant shops and office blocks, and still others digging below the Adelaide skyline to create sprawling networks of tunnels. Each attendee submitted screenshots and save files of their creations, complete with an explanation of what they had planned and why it would benefit Adelaide. Now, we're not quite sure if Renewal SA has the budget to build entire high-rise buildings out of diamonds, or exactly where the government would source a supply of lava or explosive redstone, but we wouldn't be surprised if some of these young designers found their buildings popping up in the real world. This was the first year for Hybrid World Adelaide, a sort of spin-off from the Adelaide Film Festival. It covered a lot of ground and opened South Australia's eyes to some of the things technology is capable of. Across the 4 days, kids learned how to code, how to fly drones, and how to make video games, as well as how to play them. Next year's event can only be bigger and better, and who knows what the future might hold. Are you one of the handful of gamers that wants to play PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds but are not actually already playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds? Well, good news for you. Epic Games has created their own version within their early access title, Fortnite. Fortnite Battle Royale has just been released for free on PC, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Now, if you've somehow managed to avoid the Battle Royale phenomenon and haven't seen the Hunger Games, Fortnite's iteration is pretty standard for the genre. Up to 100 players are piled into a flying party bus from which they can jump at any time onto the island below. On the way down, a glider can be deployed, giving you some ability to control your descent, and of course to avoid smearing yourself across the landscape. Once on the ground, it is a mad dash to try and find a gun, some ammunition, and start hunting down the other players. The active play area shrinks over time to keep the game from stagnating, and the last person alive wins. Maybe you'll live a long time, but ultimately you will get shot in the face. Maybe you'll get shot or beaten to death moments after landing. You are going to die. You are going to die a lot. Most of the time, you'll get to the ground unscathed and have a chance to pick up some supplies and start considering your longer-term survival. It is important early on to try and avoid open spaces as you only start with a pickaxe. It's useful for harvesting resources, but not so good for fighting. You will want guns, lots of guns, and preferably the higher quality ones. As in the standard game, weapons have different levels of rarity, with the more rare ones doing more damage, firing faster or more accurately. You can't afford to be fussy in the early stages of Battle Royale, but later on you may need to decide between a gun you have plenty of ammunition for, or one that'll do more damage. And if you do manage to kill someone, they will drop everything they were holding, which is a great, but risky way of improving your arsenal over time. The standard game's fort building and trap placement is still available in Battle Royale to add a little more spice to the mode. You don't get to bring your gear over from the standard game, of course, but if you can find or harvest the materials in the world, you can try building a fort and placing some traps, although you might not have much success doing it solo. An alternative, build traps inside one of the structures on the map from the start, and cross your fingers that you can lure unsuspecting victims to their doom. Otherwise, you could try forming a squad and launching into battle as a collective. Groups of up to 4 people in pre-organised or pick-up squads can fight together, and it's here that we suspect some actual fort building might occur as people try and funnel opponents into easy shooting lines. Or else you could just outlast other groups by cowering in a heavily trapped bunker. You know, whatever works. As of the initial release, the character you play is selected randomly from a few options. Epic has promised that later updates to the game will include choosing your own soldier and cosmetic items unlocked either via in-game achievements or cold, hard cash. The standard version of Fortnite has more than a dozen hero styles already, so expect those to make an appearance sometime soon. Fortnite also has a much brighter, cartoony look than its primary competitors, so if the grimdark look isn't your thing, you've at least got an option now. Unlike Fortnite's PvE missions, Battle Royale is currently the same map every time. Epic is promising new maps in the future, although current darling of the scene PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds itself only has one available. The Battle Royale island is pretty big, and the lineup of players are so variable between matches, the single map on offer isn't the drawback you'd think it would be for other FPS titles. When you add the ability to build structures and traps or knock down existing structures already, it's hard to imagine the one map becoming stale anytime soon. Even though Fortnite Battle Royale is technically still early in development, it does have a big advantage in being built on top of an existing game that already functions pretty well. This leaves Epic a bit more room to work on the actual gameplay, rather than having to worry too much about the underlying engine. As a result, Battle Royale already plays quite well and we're sure will only improve over time. Plus, it's free! Hard to argue with that. And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week, Angelo sits down with Adelaide developer Carmen Fantarella to discuss Icebox, Speed Gunner, and the local dev scene, while we jump right back into our pile of shame to bring you a few new reviews. In the meantime, you can catch us at playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Also, if you want to support Player Attack, you can find us on Patreon and help us bring you the latest in gaming news, plus all these wonderful interviews and reviews from the world of video games. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.